Welcome everyone. My name is Sean, and today we have an absolutely terrible story that actually is coming out of Texas, which might be a little bit surprising to you guys out there in the audience, where somebody who was renting an apartment ended up facing a burglary situation where the perpetrator was breaking into her 8-year-old daughter's bedroom through the window, and she used her firearm in order to defend herself, fatally shooting the 14-year-old burglar. And now she's facing eviction from her landlord for defending herself and her children in a state that not only has the castle doctrine, but also has stand your ground. We're going to talk about this, but before we do, I want to thank everybody who signed up over at actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?
Thank you to the podcast listeners, Spotify, Apple, and Google's podcasting platform.
Who joins us now live. Sean.
Leah Wallace bought a gun to protect herself and her family, she tells me, after a rash of break-ins in her apartment. Those happened while she and her family were not at home. But on December 14th, twice that day, while she was home with her kids, someone tried to get in.
So first of all, I gotta say, Sean Robb, the reporter on the scene, looking snazzy. I like the hat. I like the suit. I'm feeling it. However, that background noise for the audio, absolutely terrible. I'm going to have to try to filter that out so you guys can actually hear what's being said. But local news production, Dallas-Fort Worth, Channel 4, step your game up. Improve yourself. Here I am, a YouTube man who does all my work on this computer behind me, and I'm going to do my best to fix your audio because you got a lot of problems with it.
After a rash of break-ins in her apartment. Those happened while she and her family were not at home. But on December 14th, twice that day, while she was home with her kids, someone tried to get in.
But as you heard, this was the second break-in the very same night after a rash of break-ins that fortunately occurred at this woman's home when she wasn't home.
I was cleaning my living room, sweeping my floor, and I heard her window start going back up. So I went and I looked in the hallway, and I could see him standing at the window lifting it up, and I just shot.
Gunshots that killed 14-year-old Devin Baker at the bedroom window of Aaliyah Wallace's 8-year-old daughter early morning, December 14th.
It's bothering me that he was a kid.
So I think it's really important for people to hear from the people who have to defend themselves in situations like this. And when you hear the circumstances of this burglary, when you hear the time of day, when you know that this person was breaking in to the bedroom of her 8-year-old girl, you might understand in your rational, logical brain that this is justified. But you see the woman, the person who had to make that call, the person who had to make that decision, the person who had to fire that shot, being ripped up by the fact that the criminal in this instance was actually a 14-year-old. A 14-year-old burglar is the one whose life had to be taken in this particular situation. And the gun owner, who of course wants to defend her family, bought the gun to defend her family, had experienced break-in after break-in, fortunately when she wasn't home, is still ripped up inside about having to take that shot. And I think that's crucial because a lot of people like to paint gun owners as people ready for conflict, that are seeking out conflict, that want to hurt people, but nothing oftentimes we find out could be further from the truth.
The incident happened not long after police left Wallace's home after responding to her 911 call about someone trying to break into her duplex.
So I called him at 1:22 a.m. We talked for like 30 minutes. They did a report, took pictures of everything, and then they left.
So to give you an idea of the time frame right here, the initial break-in, the first burglary, was at 1:22 in the morning. She happened to catch this. She happened to call the police. I believe the police scared them off. They talked to her. They made a report and all that. However, determined to re-enter the apartment, the young man actually came back, or maybe a different person came back, as she's going to tell you, because she's actually been burglarized a number of times.
I believe there were reports that you had been burglarized or attempted burglaries before?
Yes, I have like 3 or 4 police reports before this night.
So what has happened since this incident?
The apartment called and told me that I was not supposed to have a gun at all, even though I kept calling them and telling them somebody was breaking in. They told me I could not have a gun and that I have 30 days to vacate.
Now, this is what really bothers me, because we hear all the time about how Texas has these strong Second Amendment rights. They have these protections for people. And to be clear, if this wasn't stated clearly enough in the news report or by me earlier, she lives in subsidized housing. And apparently, as a rule of subsidized housing, is that you are not allowed to defend yourself. You're not allowed to defend your home, even though this is a single mother in a home with 4 children. So she experienced break-in after break-in after break-in, people trying to enter her home. Fortunately, she wasn't home. There was another break-in earlier that day, and she's not supposed to defend herself. She's supposed to just let it happen. And obviously, probably one of the reasons why this subsidized housing is being targeted so often is due, in fact, to the fact that they have these policies against gun ownership, which should not be there. This is a perfect situation where you'd want to defend yourself, and now this woman is facing eviction, being thrown out on the street in and around Christmas time because she defended herself from a burglar and because her landlord, again, along with whatever regulatory situation that has to do with the subsidized housing, doesn't want her to be able to defend herself.
And how does that make you feel?
Feel like I'm back at square one. I've been there for 6 years, so now I don't know what to do.
This case is going to the grand jury. It's a referral, as they call it, and they're going to let citizens decide. What do you want people to know about you, Aaliyah Wallace?
That I was only protecting my kids.
I mean, just think about that. She's been a tenant here for 6 years. 6 years that this has been her home. As you heard, one of her children is an 8-year-old girl, so this is probably the only home that she knew. She's been paying her rent on time, been getting through it. Obviously, there's some subsidy, so there's some help from the government. But for 6 years, she's been a generally law-abiding, decent tenant. All she wanted to do after calling repeatedly her landlord and telling them about the break-ins was to live in a safe and secure place. However, the moment she took steps to make that place safe and secure, that's when it became a problem. That's when it became an issue. That's when she's facing eviction for no other reason than the fact that they have a policy that forbids you from owning a firearm in order to defend your property.
This case is going to the grand jury. It's a referral, as they call it, and they're going to let citizens decide. What do you want people to know about you, Aaliyah Wallace?
That I was only protecting my kids.
So this is the part that I find incredibly unusual. Why is the state of Texas, why is the district attorney in this particular instance throwing this over to the grand jury? In the state of Texas, like many states in the union, you have a castle doctrine. But in Texas in particular, you have even better property protections, especially when it is the evening. If somebody were to come to your property and they were to commit vandalism, because you cannot tell, because it's dark, whether or not that person is a vandal or a burglar, you are actually protected in your right to use lethal force against that individual. Again, if they come up to your property in the evening, even if it's just to commit vandalism, because it shouldn't be on you to assess the intent of the criminal before defending yourself. However, in this particular case, it's not open and shut. In this particular case, even though she called 911 earlier that evening and has police report after police report about break-in after break-in, it's somehow questionable. It somehow goes to the grand jury. She's somehow possibly subject to indictment, and considering she has to relocate herself in 30 days, this is how we get into those instances where people who defend themselves, defend their property, end up losing after they have to fight, the fight after the fight, because they end up in situations where they can't afford to face the trial. If this woman gets indicted, if she gets arrested, if she gets taken to jail, then her kids are going to get taken away from her. She's already on the cusp of being homeless due to the fact that she is being evicted, and this is the perfect situation that we always try to avoid in sensible states that supposedly care about the gun owner, that supposedly care about private property rights, with all these protections like the castle doctrine, stand your ground, or similar. You don't want people to be forced to take a plea deal. However, this situation is perfectly ripe for that. This is a complete and utter failure by the state of Texas, and honestly, I expect better from them, and so should all of you.
I have 4 daughters. It's just me and my 4 daughters that stay there. I just was protecting my daughters.
How do you feel about what happened?
I'm devastated that he was 14. I hate that. I literally do, and I'm so sorry. But at that point, I had to think about my babies. I didn't know he was 14 when he was on the other side of that window. All I knew that somebody could come in here and hurt me or my kids. That's it.
Look, is it sad that the person who was killed in this particular instance is 14 years old? Yes, 100%. You have somebody with potential, because life always has potential, to do better in their life, to make progress and whatnot. But let's be honest, let's be serious, let's be realistic. Your peak offending years in terms of criminality are ages 14 to 24. Just because he was 14 doesn't mean that he has no accountability for breaking into houses, doesn't mean that he wasn't a threat, and it for damn sure doesn't mean that this mother of four is somehow obligated to give him a karate battle when he's trying to break into the room of her 8-year-old daughter. So yeah, I feel the weight of what she's saying. I feel that she is heartbroken over the fact that a child was the person who ultimately ended up being killed by this situation. But we've seen time after time 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds do heinous things, and this looked like it was a situation right for that. What was going to happen when she tried to confront this individual without a firearm, without a weapon, and he would have ended up attacking her or attacking her kid? Is she supposed to take the beating? Is she supposed to take the robbery? Is she supposed to potentially be killed by this individual due to the fact that somehow him being 14 makes him immune from the consequences of his actions? Now, I'm not saying that if he would have been caught, if he would have been arrested, you try him as an adult or anything like that, but what I am saying is that if you're in this home, you don't need to check ID before you pull the trigger. If somebody's breaking into your daughter's room, you don't need to verify that they're the appropriate age to catch a bullet. He made that choice. His parents should have been more involved, and if anybody should have been held more accountable, aside from him, the burglar in this situation, it should have been his parents for allowing him to be out at God knows what hour in the morning breaking into other people's homes. Look, crime should have consequences, and ideally I would want these people to be captured, I would want them to be arrested, I would want them to be put through the system, and hopefully in the future, somewhere down the line, for them to change their ways after they have been punished for their violation of our societal standards. But the thing is, what we're seeing right here is that all of the consequences are being put on the law-abiding citizen. All of the consequences are being put on the woman who is forced to defend herself. She is looking at a grand jury indictment potentially on a case that likely should not go to a grand jury. It should be dismissed outright, as it appears to be one of the cleanest, well-documented, well-backed shootings that you could possibly have, and she should be able to stay in her apartment, and there should be no rule preventing her, as long as she is legally able to own a gun, from owning a gun in this particular apartment. Now look, as usual, I've given you my thoughts, I've given you my opinion, but I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. As usual, if you like the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about a woman facing potential criminal charges and eviction for defending herself and her children. Till next time.